46 years ago, a young teacher named Emily Carter vanished from her small wooden house by Lake Aurelia, Ontario. Disappeared without a trace, leaving her family and the entire town in shock. Authorities at the time believed she left voluntarily, but with no passport, no luggage, not even a note left behind. For decades, the case went cold, leaving only an anonymous typed letter with the words, "She's gone far away, don't look anymore." However, over time, a young female investigator in Toronto didn't believe the old hypothesis and began retracing every small clue: the embroidered wool scarf, EC, an old roll of film, and DNA still lingering on the envelope's edge. What she discovered afterward would upend the entire history of the case and stun the entire Ontario community in a way no one could have imagined. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. Aurelia, Ontario, late October 1977. A small lakeside town on Lake Couchiching where you could walk from one end to the other in just 15 minutes. Where cold mist always lingered around the low wooden rooftops and church bells rang steadily every evening. The smell of damp pine and wood smoke mixed in the air. Yellow streetlights trembled in the fog, casting pale halos on the lake like streaks of memory. It was a seemingly ordinary Saturday evening, so quiet you could clearly hear a distant logging truck rumbling by. Emily Carter, a 24-year-old elementary school teacher, lived alone in a small house at the end of Cedar Street. Neighbors often saw her smiling every morning, hair neatly tied back, carrying a stack of students' tests. That evening, she left the house as dusk fell, wearing a burgundy wool sweater and carrying a small purse. No one knew where she was going. Only the old neighbor across the street recalled hearing the door close softly and the click of heels on the wooden porch, followed by silence. With the lights still on inside, the kitchen radio played an old Linda Ronstadt song, her voice drifting endlessly in the empty room, mingling with the wind whistling through the door cracks. On the table, a teacup still held faint warmth. A textbook lay open halfway beside it, one page corner folded, as if she'd returned to finish reading in just a few minutes. But the night stretched on, the Carter house lights spilling onto the porch like an unblinking eye. When the church clock struck 10, Mrs. Carter, her mother, picked up the phone to call, hearing the rings echo into cold emptiness. No one answered. Half an hour later, Mr. Carter tried again, this time only a steady dial tone. In the neighborhood, a few curious neighbors stepped onto their porches, staring at the house with its light still on. One knocked on the door, no response. Wind from the lake brought mist blowing through, scattering dry maple leaves along the path. The night was eerily still, only the gentle lap of waves on the shore and the door softly banging against the wall in the breeze. At dawn, as fog blanketed the streets and the sunrise hadn't yet peeked through the tree line, a phone rang in the Aurelia Police Department's duty room. The duty officer answered, a trembling voice on the other end speaking softly but firmly. "Our daughter didn't come home." In that moment, the fog thickened, as if the whole town was holding its breath before something that had just begun. The next morning, as news of Emily Carter's disappearance spread, Aurelia woke to a completely different atmosphere. Fog still blanketed the lake, but instead of the usual peace, people heard the crackle of police radios, boots crunching on wet gravel, and search dogs barking from the northern woods. Local police mobilized their full staff, coordinating with volunteer search teams from Barrie and Ramara. A large map was spread across a long table in the Aurelia Police Department's makeshift meeting room, once the old firehouse storage shed. Lieutenant Martin Beck pointed at the map, drawing red circles around Lake Couchiching, Mississauga Road, and the northern woods, places Emily often walked on weekends. He spoke slowly, clearly. "We're not assuming anything. She could be lost. She could have had an accident. Or she could have been taken by someone." Friends, colleagues, neighbors were all mobilized. Police distributed Emily's portrait. Light brown hair, 5'5" tall, slim build, green eyes. People searched in groups of 4, combing both sides of the dirt roads leading to the town's edge. In their hands were photocopied flyers, edges wrinkled from humidity. At the end of Cedar Street, Emily's parents stood motionless, watching the group head into the woods, their eyes vacant. Neighbors carried flashlights, shovels, and even metal detectors, venturing deep into the dark forest where the stench of rotting leaves and cold earth rose thickly. In the first few hours, police received dozens of calls. A gas station attendant on Mississauga Road said he saw a girl like Emily around 9 p.m. buying a bottle of water and a pack of gum. Another, a freight truck driver, reported seeing a small silver car parked on the roadside near the old bridge, like her Corolla. But when investigators arrived, only tire tracks mixed in mud and fallen leaves remained. No trace solid enough to follow. Afternoon came quickly. The search expanded to the western lakeshore, where stone steps led down to the water. Wind blew hard, dry branches scraping like whispers. A young officer bent down to examine the damp ground and spotted faint footprints leading toward the forest edge. But last night's rain had blurred everything, impossible to confirm as Emily's or anyone else's. He took a cast, but back in the tech room, results showed only a faint, unanalyzable shape. Meanwhile, in downtown, the small cafe, where Emily graded papers, was packed. Everyone had a story about the last time they saw her. Some said they met her at the library last week. Others swore they saw her silhouette with a strange man in a dark coat near the bus stop. Police noted every statement, cross-checking every detail, but each story led in a different direction, contradicting the others. By day 2, Aurelia officially shifted from a peaceful town to a crime scene. Police set up barricades, strung yellow tape around suspect areas. Patrol cars circled the lakeshore, red and blue lights reflecting on the cold water. Reporters from Toronto arrived, cameras panning over the small house at the end of Cedar Street, where Emily's family kept the porch light on all night. Townsfolk eyed each other strangely, anxious, wary. In quiet grocery store chats, everyone lowered their voices when mentioning her name. On the third night, rescue divers searched part of the lake around the wooden bridge where people said they'd seen her pass. They pulled up small items, a handkerchief, a broken plastic shard, an old shoe, but nothing related to Emily. Each was laid on a table, numbered, photographed, then bagged as evidence. Lieutenant Beck stood by, gazing out the window where lake mist blurred like smoke, whispering to his assistant, "We're looking for a person or a trace in the fog." By midnight, efforts remained fruitless. Flashlights flickered through the woods, radios crackled sporadically, then fell silent. An officer closed his notebook, sighed. She just melted into thin air. And so it was Aurelia, once quiet and slow, now choked by silence. No one said it, but everyone knew. Something worse than getting lost had happened. 4 days after Emily Carter vanished, hope in Aurelia turned to weary waiting. The police bulletin board map around Lake Couchiching was covered in red pins, each marking a spot where someone said they saw her. But most led to dead ends. That morning, a woman in Barrie, over 30 miles away, called the station. She said that last night, while fueling up at the Petro-Canada, near Highway 400, she saw a young woman, very much like Emily, slim build, burgundy coat, standing next to a blond man in a beige truck. She looked scared, the woman said, and when I looked over, he was gripping her hand tight. The call sent the entire investigative team rushing out. 2 police cars and a local patrol unit coordinated, sweeping the gas station and surrounding area. But just hours later, they confirmed the woman was mistaken. The girl was a college student, heading back to Toronto with her boyfriend. Every piece of evidence, every photo, was unrelated. A spark of hope had flared and extinguished instantly. That afternoon, as the wrong person news was confirmed, the Carter family received a strange call. It came from a public line, a raspy, distorted male voice, seemingly altered by a device. "Your daughter isn't missing. She went to Toronto. Don't look anymore." Then hung up. No time to ask anything. Mr. Carter sat stunned, clutching the receiver, while Mrs. Carter burst into sobs. Police immediately traced the number it originated from a payphone next to the Aurelia bus depot, just 2 blocks from Emily's house. When investigators arrived, the booth was empty. Only cigarette smoke and a wind-flipped newspaper remained. No clear fingerprints, no witnesses to anyone suspicious. Lieutenant Beck looked around, whispering to his team, "Someone wants us to believe she's alive, and wants us to stop." News of the anonymous call rocked the town. Many began speculating Emily really left, that she wanted out of her small Aurelia life. Some colleagues said she'd seemed stressed lately, maybe hiding something. But closer friends, especially her classmate teacher, Rachel Doyle, denied it. Rachel told police, "Last week she was talking about applying to teach art class extra." Emily had no reason to leave. When police searched the house, everything was intact. Clothes, wallet, grade book, and even her car. But then one detail caught their eye. In the car maintenance log on the table, Emily had jotted a few short lines. "Take car to garage, mark check brakes." The date was 3 days before she vanished. That garage was just 4 blocks away, owned by Mark Holloway, a 30-something mechanic living alone. Records showed Mark was a longtime family friend of the Carters. He'd fixed Miss Carter's car, and neighbors too. Questioned, Mark said Emily brought the car in on Tuesday. He changed the oil and checked the brakes. Then she took it right back. "Everything normal, nothing unusual," Mark said, voice low and firm. Lieutenant Beck noted his name on the list, but no specific reason to hold him. That evening, as the search team returned to the northern woods, they found fresh tire tracks mixed with old ones. A small truck had stopped there, possibly on the night she vanished. Tracks were faint, but the distinctive tread pattern caught investigators' attention. They cast soil samples, sent to the tech lab, but the next night's rain destroyed any hope of matching. All that remained was patchy mud under flashlight beams. Aurelia now lived in 2 worlds. Daytime, people came and went at the cafe, trying to act normal. Nighttime, search groups quietly patrolled Mississauga Road with flashlights and dogs. By the 3rd night of the new search, police expanded to the town's edge, along the dirt road toward the lake. They searched all night, sweeping lights around every bend, every tree trunk, calling her name amid howling wind and waves crashing the shore. No response. Fog so thick headlights only pierced a few meters ahead. An officer looked up at Emily's house light glowing against the sky, whispering, "Maybe she's still out there somewhere. We just can't see her." At dawn, the search paused. Everyone silently packed gear, faces exhausted. Lieutenant Beck stared at the lake, where morning light reflected like cold metal. "We're chasing shadows," he said, voice hoarse. In that morning's report, the final typed line read, "No evidence found, no new traces, victims still missing." 3 days after expanding the search to southern Aurelia, the first news that halted the entire team mid-wet forest came from Patrol Officer Lewis. He radioed back to base, voice mixed with wind. "I think we found her Corolla." Within 15 minutes, all headlights pointed to a narrow path through marshy land off Highway 12. A seldom used trail, surrounded by shoulder-high pines and reeds. Emily's silver Toyota Corolla sat there, parked crookedly, right side wheels sunk slightly in mud, headlights off, doors locked, but it had sat idle at least 2 nights. Morning dew coated the roof in a thin white film, and when the technician wiped it, he saw dust had resettled in a circular pattern, meaning someone touched the car shortly after it was abandoned. Lieutenant Beck approached, peering through the window. On the driver's seat lay Emily's light jacket, neatly folded as if she'd just set it down while driving. In the back, her purse, wallet, ID, and a student notebook labeled Emily Carter, Grade 3. Everything intact, no signs of rummaging. In the trunk, a pencil box, unsent postcards, and a small bag of modeling clay Emily used for crafts. No keys, no signs of struggle, no blood or scratches on the body. But on the ground behind the tail, flashlight beams revealed something odd. Parallel tire tracks, completely different from the Toyota's tires. "These are from a small truck," the forensic technician said, kneeling, measuring gaps between treads. "Not civilian type, deeper treads, usually for delivery vehicles." He noted dimensions, photographed, then cast from the mud. Following the tracks, they stretched nearly 10 meters, then veered onto the main road, vanishing into gravel and dry leaves. No stopping signs, no skids. Just parallel streaks as if that vehicle had parked right behind Emily's Corolla, then driven off very gently. Officers pried open the doors with tools, gloved hands searching every nook. On the gearshift, a clear fingerprint remained, but quick comparison confirmed it was Emily's. A faint perfume scent lingered in the cab, cool and mixed with old plastic. Lieutenant Beck stood by the car, eyes fixed on the dark tree line ahead. If she left on her own, he said slowly, why leave her wallet and jacket? Forensics continued scanning the scene. A young officer spotted faint shoe prints on the roadside, about 4 meters from the car. Prints headed toward the woods, unclear if male or female, but larger than typical women's shoes. Beside them, a half-smoked Du Maurier cigarette, a pricey brand, rare in town, all bagged in plastic. When word of the car spread to base, Mr. and Mrs. Carter arrived immediately. Mrs. Carter collapsed seeing the familiar Corolla, trembling hand touching the cold glass. It never went anywhere without telling us, she said through tears. Lieutenant Beck gently pulled her away, not wanting her to see too much. He signaled to wrap the scene. The car was towed to storage, the area sealed for further sweeps. By noon, search teams expanded around the abandonment site. They combed the forest edge, dogs tracking scent. One dog halted, barking toward the wetter western fringe. There, they found tiny fabric fibers snagged on low bushes, color matching Emily's sweater from the night she vanished. But later tests showed just common wool jacket fibers. Another lead evaporated. Late afternoon, rain began, making trace collection harder. Lieutenant Beck sat in the patrol car, staring through fogged windshield. He felt something off about the case. From the anonymous call to the neatly abandoned car, it all seemed staged. He noted in his log, no signs of hasty departure, no signs of attack. Possible another person drove it here. That night at headquarters, scene photos spread across the table. Truck tire tracks enlarged, tech compared to database. Results matched mid-70 seconds. Ford F-100 tires, common for mechanics and garages. It reminded Beck of the name in Emily's log. Mark checked brakes. He said nothing, just underlined it and closed the file. Outside, rain pounded the tin roof. Under cold neon lights, Beck stared at the photo of the abandoned car, flashlight beam on wet body, reflecting like a wide-open eye. She didn't disappear on her own, he whispered, almost to himself. Someone helped her disappear. The next morning, the Aurelia Times ran a big headline. Missing teacher's car found, no trace of owner. Below it was a photo of the scene, fog blanketing the dirt road, yellow tape peeking through the maple woods. That small town, once peaceful, had now become a maze of unanswered questions. In the days after Emily Carter's Corolla was found, the Aurelia Police Department shifted its entire focus from search to investigation. The map thick with red pins was replaced by a list of names, all those said to have seen or spoken to Emily in the 48 hours before she vanished. Lieutenant Martin Beck, after nearly 3 decades on the job, knew a case like this only began when people sat down, face to face with every tiniest detail. He and his subordinate, Officer Lewis, split the list. The first was Rachel Doyle, Emily's colleague and closest friend at Couchiching Heights Elementary. Rachel sat in the small interrogation room, holding a cold coffee cup, voice trembling slightly. Friday afternoon, we were still talking in the teacher's lounge, she recounted. Emily said she'd head home early to tidy the classroom over the weekend. She mentioned maybe stopping at the grocery store on the way. Beck asked if she'd seemed worried or unusual. Rachel shook her head. Not at all. She said she wanted to write a letter to her mom, even joked about baking pumpkin pie over the weekend. She looked totally normal. The second was Mrs. Evelyn Moore, the neighbor across the street. Mrs. Moore, over 60, silver-haired, sharp-eyed. She said that evening, around 7, she saw lights on in Emily's house and heard the radio drifting out. I remember clearly, because I just fed the cat, she said. I caught a glimpse of her passing the window. Seemed like she was wearing a red coat or burgundy something. Beck asked if she saw anyone with her. She answered firmly, no, just her. Then the house went dark, then lit up again around 9. I thought she was back, turns out not. The third, the owner of Duncan's Grocery, a skinny old man, eyes squinted from years of glasses. He confirmed that around 6:30 p.m., Emily stopped by for milk, sugar, and a spool of sewing thread. He remembered because she paid with a $5 bill and left loose change on the counter. She was very polite. No one with her. Everything completely normal, he said. Asked about other customers then. He only recalled a man in a leather jacket buying cigarettes and leaving about 2 minutes before Emily. He didn't remember the face, just a slightly raspy voice, and the smell of motor oil. Police noted that detail. Smell of motor oil. They thought of Mark Holloway, the garage owner near Emily's house. Mark was the only one without a clear alibi for the night she vanished. That day, when summoned for a statement, he arrived with an eerily calm demeanor, his work overalls still flecked with black grease. Beck asked, "Did you see Emily Carter on Friday evening?" Mark looked straight, answered curtly, "No. I didn't see her that day." No blink. No hesitation. His voice, even as a machine. Beck waited, hoping for more, but Mark just crossed his arms, eyes indifferent. "Did she come to your garage any time before that?" Beck pressed. "Yes, Tuesday. I changed the oil, checked the brakes, all done. She took the car right back, thanked me, and left. Haven't seen her since." Beck asked further, "Did you know if she was seeing anyone or going out with anyone lately?" Mark shrugged. "No, I don't pry into customers' business." He ended the questioning with, "If I knew anything, I'd say so. But really, she wasn't anyone special enough for somebody to want to hurt her." After Mark left, Beck sat pensively staring at his notes. No clear reason to suspect, just a hunch. He was the last one with specific contact with Emily, and Mark's near-cold composure bothered Beck. He wrote briefly in the file. "No evidence. No motive. But note for follow-up." In the following days, investigators continued screening a few others. The cafe waitress, the mail carrier, a student who said they saw the teacher on the street Friday afternoon. But each statement opened a possibility, then closed it right away. Witnesses differed on times, on clothing, even on car colors. Nothing matched. By December, the first snow began blanketing Aurelia White. On Beck's desk, the missing Emily Carter file had grown to nearly 200 pages. Physical evidence, truck tire tracks, cigarette butt, shoe prints, all led nowhere conclusive. Tire tracks matched hundreds of trucks across Ontario. The cigarette butt had no DNA. Shoe prints lacked comparison samples. Forensics concluded. No direct physical evidence. Lieutenant Beck sat in his office gazing out the snow-covered window, half-smoked cigarette in hand. Every lead had gone colder than the approaching winter. He knew in just a few more weeks, this would be shelved as pending awaiting new info, then sink into oblivion like hundreds of others. But what gnawed at him wasn't the lack of evidence, but the feeling someone was watching the investigation silently, almost deliberately. Because every time they asked about Emily, it seemed someone already knew they were coming. Before Christmas 1977, the Aurelia Times ran its final story on the disappearance. Small headline. Buried on page 3. No trace of young teacher still missing. Police continue investigation. Below it, an old photo of Emily in the classroom, gentle smile, holding a box of white chalk. In the photo's corner, a detail few noticed. The window curtain behind reflected the silhouette of a man standing in the schoolyard, dark coat. In January the next year, the file was officially suspended. Beck wrote the final line in the log. No evidence, no motive, no progress. Then he closed the folder, placed it on the shelf among dozens of others, all labeled the same. Cold case. March 1978. Winter in Aurelia, refused to retreat. Snow still lay thick on rooftops, streets empty, except for distant snowplow rumbles. The Carter family lived more quietly than ever. Their house where Emily used to visit every weekend now looked abandoned, windows always curtained, porch light on every evening like a small ritual for hope. Nearly half a year had passed since she vanished. No calls, no traces, all searches stopped. The town returned to daily rhythm. Only that small house still holding an unfillable void. On the morning of March 14, as Mr. Carter brought in the mail from the box, he saw a strange envelope. No return address, no stamp. Just one neatly typed line, for Mr. Robert Carter. Black ink, typed on an old machine, a few letters slightly smudged on the right edge as if the type bar was misaligned. He opened it. Inside, a single folded sheet, typed on the same machine. Just one line. She's gone far away. Don't look anymore. No signature, no punctuation. The line centered on the page, as if the writer deliberately left white space around it to let the words echo alone. Mr. Carter read it over and over, feeling his blood freeze. Mrs. Carter rushed over, snatched the paper, eyes bulging. "Who sent this? What do they know about our daughter?" she said, voice breaking. Police were called immediately. Lieutenant Beck arrived within 30 minutes, old file in hand. He gloved up, carefully placed the letter on the table, examined every detail. "Canada bond paper," he said quietly. "Common for accounting and admin offices, but good quality. Not easy to find around here." He sniffed lightly, detecting heavy ink smell, oil-based ink, for 1,970 seconds. Remington typewriters. Not the cheap fluid type, common in homes. That caught Beck's attention. An ordinary person would handwrite a letter, not use an office typewriter. He ordered the envelope sealed and sent straight to the Ontario Provincial Police, OPP, forensics lab in Toronto. Testing revealed a very faint thumbprint on the paper edge, but too faint for a print lift. No DNA, no hair fibers, no postmark. Every trace avenue blocked. Only one certainty. Someone personally dropped the letter in the Carter's mailbox. Lieutenant Beck returned to the scene, checked the surroundings. Snow so deep, no footprints remained. "They came at night," he told Officer Lewis, "and knew exactly where this house is." Beck noted the envelope cut very evenly, not torn but sliced with a knife, a careful, almost cold gesture. It reminded him of someone working in a technical environment accustomed to machine precision. The letter was kept as evidence. Press got wind. Aurelia buzzed again. Aurelia Times ran a big headline. "Mystery letter. She's gone far away. Emily Carter disappearance reignites." The whole town debated. Some said it was a cruel prank. Others insisted Emily really left, and the sender just wanted the family to accept it. But Beck didn't believe in coincidence. He recalled the Du Maurier cigarette butt at the scene, a rare brand, common among long-shift mechanics in shops. He began screening the list of Remington typewriter owners in Aurelia and surroundings. The list wasn't long, mostly law offices, schools, small shops. One name stopped Beck cold. Holloway Auto. Repair, the only garage in the area with a small office and an old Remington typewriter for customer invoices. Owner: Mark Holloway. Beck met Mark a second time, but this time he was more guarded. When Beck casually asked, "Do you use a typewriter in the garage?" Mark answered quickly, almost rehearsed. "Yes, but it's broken. I ditched it in January." Beck stayed silent, looking over Mark's shoulder. In the office corner, amid cluttered papers, sat the Remington Model 12 under a thin dust layer, still plugged in. He said nothing, just nodded and left. On the way back, Beck noted in his log, "Remington typewriter needs further verification. Possible direct link to 3/1078 letter." But without a search warrant, he couldn't do more. When he sent ink from the letter for comparison to Holloway's sample, forensics returned inconclusive. Common ink type, no unique markers. Beck knew he'd touched something, but not enough evidence to hold. In April that year, the case officially moved to cold file status. The letter became the only valuable evidence left. It was placed in a plastic envelope, sealed, stored in a metal filing cabinet. Years later, Beck still remembered that paper clearly. The line centered, short, cold, like a death sentence. As for the Carter family, from the day they received the letter, they never mentioned searching again. Mrs. Carter hung her daughter's photo on the wall, next to hand-embroidered words, "Faith is the only map in the dark." Every evening, she still turned on the porch light, but no longer looked out. Aurelia sank into silence, and in police files, the Emily Carter case gained one note. March 1978, anonymous letter received, possible contact. From then on, for many years, no one mentioned her again. But that letter, the thin, cold, nameless sheet, lay quietly in the file drawer, waiting for someone patient enough to open it once more. After the anonymous letter appeared, everything gradually slipped out of control. Aurelia police, though keeping the case in files, faced public pressure and lack of evidence that shifted the investigation. They began leaning toward the hypothesis that Emily Carter left voluntarily. In 1978, press started writing differently. No longer missing teacher, but teacher may have left Aurelia for new life. From victim, Emily became a romantic mystery everyone interpreted their own way. Police received scattered tips from the Toronto area, saying someone saw a woman like Emily Carter working at a cafe or used bookstore. Each tip redirected the investigation. In 1979, they sent 2 detectives to Toronto, searched 2 weeks, interviewed over 10 similar-looking women. All wrong. Each return thickened the file with meaningless pages. Lieutenant Beck, nearing retirement then, still harbored doubts. He knew Emily wasn't the type to leave. She had family, job, friends, a simple, uneventful life. But the truth in investigation is, no evidence, and belief is just hunch. By 1980, the case was handed to Inspector Roy Atkins, a practical man who trusted numbers over intuition. He reviewed the entire file, read the anonymous letter, then declared in a meeting, no crime signs, no violence evidence, possible voluntary departure. That one statement shifted the whole investigation. Beck objected, but a retiring man's voice carried no weight. Mr. Carter says his daughter would never do that, Beck said, but who really knows what people think? Atkins replied coldly, we don't investigate what the dead might think, we investigate what's left. And here, nothing's left. The next 5 years, 1,980 to 1,985, the Emily Carter file gradually slid off desks. New detectives cycled through, each spending weeks glancing, then moving on. Each anniversary of her disappearance, Mr. and Mrs. Carter sent letters to the station, asking for new leads. Answers always the same, we're still following tips. But really, no one was. Everyone believed Emily had gone far away. Town rumors took root too. Some said she left with a secret lover, a music teacher from her old school. Others even rumored she was living in the U.S., changed name, had kids. One persistent story claimed Emily fell for a married man, and when discovered, she vanished to avoid scandal. No one knew the source, but it spread fast, and scarier people started believing. In Aurelia, memory of the gentle teacher faded, replaced by an image of a woman who ran off for love. The Aurelia Times in 1982 even ran a half-joking article. If Emily Carter is alive, hope she knows the town still remembers her and wants to hear that secret love story. Reading those lines, Mr. Carter tore the paper silently. Mrs. Carter cried, but said nothing. The aging couple became shadows in a house full of daughters' photos. They still wrote regularly to provincial police, enclosing copies of the anonymous letter, hoping someone would look again. In 1983, Lieutenant Beck officially retired. Before handover, he visited the Carters one last time. He said quietly, I never believed she left on her own, but without evidence, they'll say otherwise. He gave them the only copy of the letter, just so they'd have something of their daughter. If anyone reopens this, tell them to read the letter closely, he said. Not the content, but how it's written. Then he left, never returning to the station. By 1985, after all investigative paths dead-ended, the file was officially transferred to OPP Cold Case Division, the Ontario Provincial Police Unit storing stalled cases. It was an old building on Toronto's outskirts, where thousands of files sat in tiered iron cabinets, each labeled, numbered, dust-covered. Emily's went in the female, missing, non-violent indicators drawer. A cold classification label, reflecting nothing but the era's assumptions. When the file was archived, a young detective added the final line on the cover. Carter, Emily, last sighting October 1977, presumed voluntary disappearance. Those 5 words enough to erase 10 years of her parents' belief that their daughter was harmed. And in Aurelia, the house at the end of Cedar Street gradually decayed. Mrs. Carter still turned on the porch light every evening. That winter, snow fell so thick, the light was just a faint yellow glow peeking through the blizzard. Many said she was crazy, but anyone who'd lost a child understood. It was the only way to feel she was still out there somewhere, just not found the way home yet. The Emily Carter case officially went cold at the end of 1985. No one asked anymore. No one wrote anymore. The wooden house still stood there, silently overlooking Lake Couchiching, the water like a foggy mirror reflecting a mistake that spanned generations. They had believed the easiest thing, instead of the truth. 45 years after Emily Carter vanished, her files still lay dormant in an iron cabinet in the basement of the Ontario Provincial Police Cold Case Storage Centre, where fluorescent lights cast down on endless rows of metal filing aisles. In February 2022, winter winds swept through Toronto, carrying chill from Lake Ontario. But in the small third-floor office, Detective Ava Nguyen sat diligently reading through old case files. She was one of the youngest investigators in the cold case unit, just 32, but with a special talent for spotting overlooked details. On her computer screen, a list of over 100 unsolved missing persons cases from the 1,970 seconds appeared. Ava scrolled through each name until stopping at Carter, Emily, missing 1,977, Aurelia, Ontario. She opened the electronic file and was immediately drawn into the story. An elementary school teacher vanished without a trace, her car neatly abandoned by the roadside, an anonymous letter saying, "Don't look anymore." The more she read, the stranger it seemed. No physical evidence had been analyzed to modern standards. All tests stopped at 1,978 technology. She printed the entire file, sat at the table, flipping through yellowed pages. Amid the reports typed in stiff courier font, she found a plastic-bagged envelope clipped in, the March 1978 anonymous letter. The typed line, "She's gone far away. Don't look anymore." Still clear, but the paper edges discolored. Ava gloved up, used a magnifying glass to examine closely. On the envelope's sealed flap, she spotted a darker, uneven layer of glue, possible remnant epithelial cells from saliva. She opened the 1,978 forensics log, seeing the brief note, "No clear fingerprints detected, no biological testing performed." Ava sat silent for a long time. She wondered, why didn't anyone check for DNA? Then remembered in 1978, the concept wasn't applied yet. A thought flashed. If the letter was preserved well enough, even a tiny DNA sample could still exist. The next day, Ava took the envelope to the Ontario Forensic Institute in Scarborough. In the cold, brightly lit lab, she met Dr. Elliot Fraser, expert in next-generation DNA sequencing technology method allowing full genome reconstruction from just a few cells. Ava placed the plastic bag on the stainless table, speaking slowly. 1,978 document, intact seal. I want reanalysis with the latest generation. Fraser glanced over, eyebrow raised. 40 years? Sample may have degraded. Ava replied. If there's a 1% chance, I want to try. Fraser nodded. We'll sample non-invasively. If skin cells or saliva remain on the glue, new tech can amplify it. She signed the evidence handover log, and the letter, the sole evidence in the Emily Carter case, was moved to a sterile examination chamber, sealed in a negative 20 degrees Celsius cold gas cabinet. 3 weeks later, Ava got the call. "When, you should come right away," Fraser said. His voice tinged with excitement. When she arrived, he pointed to the computer screen. Genetic graph showing 2 distinct sequences. "We found DNA from 2 individuals," he said. "One female matches victim profile, possibly cells from the original letter or later handling, but the other is male, no match to any CODIS or national database criminal records." Ava leaned in, eyes on the blinking gene codes. "Can you run genetic genealogy?" she asked. Fraser nodded. "We've uploaded to the Forensic Genetic Genealogy database. It's analyzing distant relatives based on DNA sequence." He looked at her. "If lucky, we'll find 3rd or 4th degree relatives of the sender." A week later, results arrived. The printed report was 3 pages thick, headlined, "Partial Match Detected. Holloway, Lineage." Ava read slowly, word by word. The Holloways. She dug back into the old file. That name appeared multiple times. Mark Holloway, garage owner near Emily's home, last to service her car, who said, "I didn't see her that day." A thin thread had just connected 2 eras of investigation, after 45 years. Ava leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the paper. She felt like hearing something echo from the old file cabinets, the voices of those who failed, the generation that missed this clue due to lacking tech. In her mind rang Lieutenant Beck's final 1,985 log entry. No evidence, no motive, no progress. Now, that very paper had betrayed that conclusion. That evening, back in her small East York apartment, Ava opened the file on her laptop, gazing at Emily Carter's black and white photo. The young teacher smiling before the blackboard, eyes bright, brown hair neatly tied. Below the photo, Beck's handwritten note. "She didn't leave." Ava whispered to herself, "You were right." The next morning, she presented the report to the unit chief. "I want to reopen the Emily Carter case," Ava said. "Unidentified DNA trace, genetic link to Holloway family. I believe the letter sender knows what happened." The Chief Inspector Grant looked at her long, then nodded. "Fine. You have 3 months. But remember, this buried 40 years. Make sure you're not just waking a ghost." Ava replied calmly, "I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm afraid of silence." And so, after nearly half a century gathering dust, the Carter, Emily, missing 1,977 file was officially reopened. In the cold case unit's cold, quiet building, a green status light blinked on file cabinet 4,472. Inside, the anonymous letter, once seemingly meaningless evidence, had begun to speak. The Ontario Forensic Institute's examination room was always quiet, but that morning, the air thickened. On the large wall-mounted screen, 2 parallel DNA sequences displayed clearly, one blue-coated strand, one red. Dr. Elliot Fraser stood, hands clasped behind his back beside Ava Nguyen, speaking softly as if afraid to break the surrounding silence. "This is the confirmation. First sample. Female. Perfect match to genome extracted from victim's hairbrush in 1977 possessions. No doubt. That's Emily Carter." He paused, gaze heavy. "Second sample male. And here's the interesting, or most telling part." Ava held her breath, eyes glued to the blinking gene segments. "Did you find any CODIS or national database match?" she asked. Fraser shook his head. "No. This person never arrested, never profiled. No criminal record, no trace in any system." He clicked the mouse, zooming the genealogical analysis area. "But I ran it through international genetic genealogy databases, GenMatch, GEDTree, and Ancestry DNA. System flagged a third-degree connection to Holloway lineage in Simcoe County. Genetic match rate 12.8%. Enough to confirm close relative, possibly first cousin or direct bloodline." That name Holloway made the room colder. Ava froze. She'd seen it dozens of times in the old file. Mark Holloway, garage owner where Emily serviced her car. The man who lied, with too calm composure to be unsuspected. "Are you certain of the results?" Ava asked. Fraser nodded, placing the printed report on the steel table. 99.998% certain. If there's an error, it's God's. Ava took the printout, eyes scanning the dry technical lines. Specimen B, male DNA, Y, star match, with Holloway familial cluster, genetic distance, 3.7. Source, adhesive surface, back flap. Meaning the sender's DNA stuck to the envelope glue, possibly saliva, possibly hand sweat. And that person shared blood with the Holloways. She left the lab, carrying the file like a heavy stone. In the hallway, solved DNA case photos hung evenly on walls. A young face, a victim, a convicted perpetrator, each a closure. But she knew this one was just opening. That evening, Ava returned to the Toronto Cold Case Unit office. She turned on the light, room stark white against the night. On the table, the original paper file, Lieutenant Beck's 1977 notes photocopy. She flipped to the last page. Bold black ink handwriting. Mark Holloway. No alibi. After 6:30 p.m. Claimed not to see victim. In the margin, Beck's question mark. Ava touched the smudged ink, feeling the long dead man's breath. She began reviewing everything on Mark. Per police records, in 1977 he was 32, owner of a small garage on Forest Hill Road, less than a mile from Emily's. No priors, no record. Wife died early in a 1975 motorcycle accident, no children. Back then, police found no reason to suspect, just a quiet man, reclusive, working days amid oil and metal smells. After the Emily Carter case went cold, Mark sold the garage, moved to Barrie in 1982, still lived there. Ava opened her laptop, searched civil records. Mark Holloway, now 77, in a small Barrie suburb home, still registered for personal business license as Mobile Mechanic Service. Unmarried, no kids. Sole surviving Simcoe County relative. Distant cousin Samuel Granger arrested for assault in 1980. Then vanished without address. Ava noted both names. The next day, she met Inspector Grant to present results. In the small conference room, she spread the file on the table, detail by detail. DNA report, family tree, 1,977 old file. Anonymous letter has 2 DNA samples. Female victim, male sender, male sample blood, linked to Holloway family, specifically Aurelia, Barrie cluster. Grant leaned back, pensive. You think it's Mark? Ava shook her head. Can't confirm. Could be him, could be relative, but definitely, the sender knew exactly what happened to Emily Carter. No one else had reason to write. She's gone far away, don't look anymore. Grant silent long, then asked, You know how many investigators this beat? Ava replied, I know, but this time, I have what they didn't. She held up the DNA results, light reflecting off the paper. A name, even if genetic. That afternoon, Ava drove to Aurelia. March sky overcast gray, fog blanketing Lake Couchiching like a giant mourning veil. She stopped before the old Carter house, now boarded up, yard overgrown. For sale, sign crooked, near broken. Porch still had the small light fixture long off, but cord plugged in. Ava stood long, imagining the old father opening the envelope, reading that cold line. She whispered, as if to Emily herself, We won't stop. That evening, she stopped at a small downtown cafe. The elderly owner, hearing Emily Carter's name, just sighed softly. That teacher, people said she left. But I never believed. Ava asked, Know any Holloway who lived here? She replied, Oh, Mark Holloway. Fixed cars for the whole town. Quiet, didn't talk much. When she vanished, I remember he went to the Carters often. Said he'd help search, brought flyers. Strange after that, he disappeared. Sometime in 1982, sold the garage, gone who knows where. That account chilled Ava's spine. The self-proclaimed search helper had DNA on the "Don't look anymore" letter. She returned to the hotel, spread file on the bed, wrote short in notebook. If letter sender is Holloway, he didn't just know he wanted to end the search. 3 days later, expanded genealogical trace results arrived. YSTR gene structure showed male DNA likely from second branch of Holloway family, specifically son of Mark's brother, Daniel Holloway, dead since 1999. But Daniel had no recorded legitimate sons. Only possibility, illegitimate child, or close blood relative. Ava added, letter writer possibly Mark, or close Holloway relative. But indirect DNA evidence forces Holloway back to investigation center. As she left the room, cold rain poured outside. On the car window, water droplets ran long like ink smudges, exactly like the 1,978 letters smears. And in that moment, Ava knew the Emily Carter case was no longer an old file. It had come alive and was watching her every step. April 2022, as the last snow melted on Aurelia's dirt roads, Detective Ava Nguyen and the OPP forensics team returned to where Emily Carter's Toyota Corolla was found 45 years before. Landscape changed, but the familiar curve of the slope, black pines leaning over the forest edge, and gravel-mixed ground, still held the same chill as the 1,977 black and white photo she'd stared at hundreds of times. Investigation vehicles parked along the trail, team in white coveralls, gloved, prepped ground-penetrating radar and metal detectors. Ava stood silent a moment, breathed deep, then whispered to herself, "If he was really here, something still left." She pointed to the ground where the Corolla once sat crooked, right wheels sunk in mud. In 1977, the area was superficially swept. Now, with new tech, everything could retell its story. Forensic technician Julia Merrick powered on the radar, a compact device emitting sound waves deep into the soil below. On the handheld screen, gentle curving colored lines appeared, representing disturbed soil layers. "There's an anomaly here," Julia said, pointing to a crescent-shaped bright streak about 15 centimeters below the surface. Ava crouched down, lightly digging with a small trowel. The soil there was different, harder and grayer, as if once compacted. When they scooped up a handful, sunlight revealed a small mud-caked metal object glinting, a paint-chip pale beige. Ava squinted, carefully picking it up with tweezers, placing it in an evidence bag. "Not from the Toyota Corolla," she said immediately. "Emily's car was silver. This is beige with a golden sheen." Julia nodded. "Right, and this paint layer is thicker, industrial type." They continued digging around the area, finding a few other fragments, small, bent, as if chipped off from a light impact against something hard. Once everything was collected, Ava drove back to Toronto that night. In the lab, she requested comparison of this paint sample against the National Canadian Vehicle Paint Database. 3 days later, the technician sent a brief email. Match results. Desert beige metallic paint sample. Ford F-100 pickup line. 1,976. 1,977 production year. Match percentage. 99.4%. Ava sat motionless before the screen. Ford F-100, the exact small truck-type forensics in 1977 suspected from tire tracks beside the Corolla. Back then they couldn't specify due to lack of data, but now, the picture was piecing together. She reopened Mark Holloway's old file. The vehicle registration section showed vehicle, Ford 500, year 1976, color, desert beige. The truck registered under his name in August 1976, at the Forest Hill garage address. Ava leaned back slightly, hands clasped. "We have paint, vehicle line, and matching address," she said to herself. But like every good investigator, she knew matches don't mean guilt. Needed more physical evidence, something undeniable. The next day, she and Julia returned to the scene to continue sweeping the surrounding area. Lake wind carried chill, radar humming steadily. This time they moved toward the forest edge, about 10 meters from the car spot, where the ground dipped lower. Julia stopped, frowning. Metal signal here. She staked a marker, then scanned thoroughly with the magnetometer. Strong signal. As they dug down, a faint clink sounded, the trowel tip hitting something hard. They peeled away soil layers, revealing a large rusty screw, head still flecked with beige paint. This screw type was commonly used to secure truck bed guards. Ava looked at Julia. "Ford F-100 uses these too," Julia replied, voice low. "And if the screw fell here, means that truck stopped longer than we thought." They continued collecting soil samples around, logging coordinates, photographing the entire area. This time, Ava noticed something small but key. On a nearby tree trunk, a deep scratch, weathered by time but still a perfect circle, like a bumper rub mark. She measured it, noting in her log, scratch height 90 centimeters matches Ford F-100 rear bumper height. Back home, she compiled all images, reconstructing the scene in 3D simulation software. On screen, 2 vehicles appeared. Emily's silver Toyota Corolla, parked crookedly roadside. Behind it, a beige Ford F-100 parked tight. With them that close, just opening the passenger door, someone from the truck could reach the small car in seconds. "No violence needed," Ava said, Just a knock on the window, a familiar voice. She imagined the scene of the 22nd of October 1977 night. Thick fog, empty dirt road, Emily pulling over, maybe hearing a call or seeing someone known. A small truck approaching from behind, headlights off, parking tight curbside, and in a moment, everything vanished. Ava sent all data to Toronto's Criminal Analysis Center, requesting trace on whether Mark's Ford F-100 still had insurance or inspection records in the system. Next day, results returned. Vehicle declared sold for scrap in 1983. No buyer recorded. Convenient, Ava said wryly. A perfect truck to disappear. She drove to Barrie, to Mark Holloway's house. The small home sat on the edge of an old neighborhood, weathered wood walls, backyard full of old mechanic junk. As Ava pulled up, Mark knelt beside a newer pickup, wiping hands on a rag. He looked at her, eyes cold, unsurprised. "Police again?" he said, voice raspy. "How many years, and still not forgotten?" Ava approached, flashing her badge. "I'm Detective Newen, Cold Case Unit. I'm reviewing Emily Carter's disappearance." Mark smiled faintly, smirking. "That name again." "I don't know her." Ava scanned the yard, spotting an old metal frame leaning against the wall, paint flaking in patches, still the old beige. "You drove a Ford F-100, right?" Mark looked up, eyes flashing briefly, then indifferent again. "I've driven dozens of trucks. Police gonna search if I kept it 40 years? Ava didn't reply. She knew she lacked evidence to charge, but she noticed his hand tremble slightly, lighting a cigarette. His thumb showed a small arc-shaped scar, exact spot where one might nick sealing an envelope with a knife. She noted it mentally, said nothing more. As she returned to her car, sunset gilded the old road, where nearly half a century ago, a woman vanished without trace. Now, under frozen soil, paint chips had told the story's beginning. And Ava knew this was just the first step in a deep dig, not just underground, but into a town's cold, forgotten memory. 3 days after returning to Aurelia, Ava began tracking down 1,977 search participants, now elderly, silver-haired, but still holding memories of that foggy night by Lake Couchiching. She wanted to hear from them, not mechanical statements or logs, but real recollections, things not in the files. First was Harold Baines, 27 then, first search volunteer. Now 72, in a small Midland nursing home. Harold remembered vividly seeing Mechanic Holloway in the woods. He recounted in raspy voice, frail hands trembling on teacup. "We split into groups heading different directions. Mark volunteered, said he knew terrain from fishing around the lake. At first, he was eager, map, flashlight, leading the group. But near the dirt road, where Carter's car was found, he suddenly said we should veer left into northern woods, while police ordered along the lakeshore. We followed thinking he knew better. But soon, he said he had to go back to the car for more batteries, then vanished. When the group returned, no one saw him. I thought he got lost." Ava asked. "Did you report that to police then?" Harold nodded. "Yes, but they said maybe he was tired and went home. They didn't think a helper could be the problem." She noted every word carefully. In her mind, pieces sharpened. Mark wasn't just present in the search, he directed it. The one who led the whole group away from the real search area. Second witness. Betty Lorne, Carter family neighbor, who cooked for search teams. When Ava arrived, she was planting flowers on the porch, wrinkled face but bright eyes. Mentioning Emily, she paused long, then said, "After she vanished, Mark Holloway came constantly. Every few days, he'd visit the Carters, bring pie, say he wouldn't give up, felt guilty for not finding anything. Mr. Carter believed, even said Mark was the only one who didn't forget Emily. But I saw something off each visit. He always asked the same. Had police checked the lake thoroughly, and had anyone searched his garage?" Mr. Carter thought concern. "I saw him probing how far they'd gotten," Ava asked. "How long after did he keep coming?" Betty replied. "About half a year. Stopped right when that letter arrived. Week before the letter, I saw him at Carter's evening, talking on the porch. Lights off. After that night, he never returned." Ava went silent. A eager searcher vanished exactly when the letter appeared. In her mind, Dr. Fraser's voice rang metallic cold. Envelope flap DNA, linked to Holloway bloodline. She met third. George Randall, young officer then in search team, now retired in Collingwood. Hearing Ava's intro, he stared long, said, "I've waited for someone to revisit this. 45 years. He opened a drawer, pulled a yellowed photo first search group. Center, tall man in dark coat, flashlight in hand, Mark Holloway. Look, George said. He always wanted center frame. That night, I remember clearly he was the only one who knew the car's location before police announced publicly. Ava frowned. How'd he know? George shrugged. No one knows. When we got radio info, Mark was already there. Said he heard rumors, but checks showed no one, but police knew the spot. I told Lieutenant Beck. He said he'd look into it, but the case went cold too fast. Ava's heart pounded. 3 witnesses, 3 stories, same pattern. The dedicated volunteer, always at key times and places. She opened her notebook, wrote short, "Most eager searcher knows exactly where to avoid." That afternoon, she visited Aurelia Public Library storing 1,972 local papers. In archives, Ava found a 1,977 photo of search group at Lake Couchiching, bottom left. Mark Holloway head down, map in hand, seeming to speak to Lieutenant Beck. On his coat, clear mud streaks on right sleeve and arm exact spot, where 1,977 file, noted beige paint flecks in soil. Ava zoomed, eyes fixed. Faint geometric mark, nearly paint streak, ran down the sleeve. He was near Emily's car, she whispered. That evening, in her Lakeview hotel room, Ava sat before laptop, reopening full digital file. Timeline stretched. 1977. Mark joins search. Misdirects. 1,978. Letter sent. Holloway blood DNA. 2022. Paint matches Mark's Ford F-100. Each line connected like red thread through time. She felt, in silence, Emily watching. Next day, Ava returned to Toronto, presented to Inspector Grant. On conference table, she spread new statements recordings of Harold, Betty, George, zoomed Mark mud, coat photo, paint match results. We're on target, she said firmly. Mark Holloway wasn't just involved, he interfered from start, derailing the search. And the 1,978 letter wasn't a warning, but a message from the perpetrator. Grant pondered, fingers tapping lightly. What next? Ava replied, research Holloway's old garage. If he staged the scene, something's still buried. Grant stared long, then nodded. You have 72 hours for warrant and start. But careful when. Survivors after 40 years fear nothing except truth. Leaving, Ava stood at glass door, watching Toronto rain. On glass, her reflection with notebook line she'd just added. Best hiders are those once under searchlights. She closed the notebook, breathed deep. Next time, they'd find not just clues. They'd find what Mark Holloway always hid. Back in Toronto, Ava spent nights in cold case unit office, desk lamp on thick files, and DNA data screen. After Grant meeting, she expanded genealogy analysis, not just Mark Holloway, but all genetically linked to male DNA on 1,978 envelope. She contacted Ontario Forensic Genetic Genealogy Centre, combining public genetic data with civil records. Young tech Emily Zhao opened Family Tree Builder on server, loaded, specimen B, male, 1,978 letter sequence. Thousands of connections spiderwebbed. Dots for distant relatives, complex lines across southern Ontario. Here's Holloway cluster, Emily said, pointing high match genes. From initial analysis, DNA likely side branch third or fourth degree relative of Mark Holloway. I'll run expanded through marriage and blood ties. She typed fast. Lines lit. Name appeared at diagram age. Samuel Granger. Ava leaned in. Granger? Emily nodded. Same great grandfather as Mark Holloway. Paternal brother line. Lived same Aurelia neighborhood, 1,970 seconds. Found his driver's license address on Forest Hill Road, just 2 houses from Mark's garage. Ava's heart tightened. So, in 1977, they lived same area, blood relatives, both single adult men. Exactly, Emily replied. And one more thing. She opened another window, old police file copy. Samuel Granger, suspected in 1980 Barrie woman assault victim, survived, but couldn't ID perp due to masked face. Granger left Ontario after, whereabouts unknown. File notes, missing, divided by untraceable, since 1981. Ava silent long. Room only fan hum. Then softly. If he vanished just 3 years after Emily Carter, and if letter DNA relative to both, likely disappearance wasn't one man. She requested 1,980 assault original file from Barrie Police. When arrived, she opened first page victim Linda Pierce, 22, attacked walking home, less than a mile from Samuel Granger's work. In suspect description, detail chilled Ava. Suspect has small arc-shaped scar on right thumb. Ava immediately opened photo of Mark she took weeks ago at his house. In shot, Mark lighting cigarette, clear round scar on right thumb under afternoon Sunday. She recalled seeing its small detail unexplained then. Now, late confirmation, these 2 men may have shared a secret, an act, a crime. That evening, Ava pinned family tree on wall, tacked Mark and Samuel photos side by side. Between, she drew red line, marked same blood, same time, same place. Below, marker note. Not 1, but 2. She called Dr. Fraser at forensics. Need verification possible letter DNA from Mark's close relative. Not him. Fraser replied. Yes. Why? Stir sequence near match, not exact. If first cousin or half-brother, still 99% match. Ava asked. If not Mark writing letter, could it be Samuel Granger? Fraser pondered. Entirely possible. If they lived near each other 1,977, shared environment, equipment like typewriter letter writer could be Samuel. Ava hung up, heart pounding. If Samuel wrote letter, he was still in Aurelia 1978 after Emily vanished and likely knew Mark. Perhaps not just relatives, accomplices. Next day, Ava drove back to Aurelia, to old civil registry office. She dug archives, and in 1977 address file page, truly. Granger, Samuel, renting at 412 Forest Hill Road, near Holloway Auto Repair. She stood silent, long, eyes on house number, feeling like seeing ghost of old year. Just 2 short houses, but enough to hide all truth 40 years. Ava asked the elderly librarian working in the archives room, "Do you remember a man named Granger who lived here?" The old man frowned, thought for a moment, then said, "Sure. He worked for Mark's garage for a while. Those 2 were inseparable. If Mark worked days, Samuel stayed nights. People said they opened a Saturday night repair shop for regulars. Then one day, Samuel vanished. Mark said he went to Alberta for work. No one asked more." As Ava left the building, dusk was falling, rain drizzling. She stood in the middle of Forest Hill Street now, just a few old houses and a new auto shop built on the site of Holloway's old garage. In the dim light, she imagined 2 figures, one tall, one short, hauling something heavy into the workshop. On the drive back to Toronto, Ava called Inspector Grant. "We have a problem," she said. "Envelope DNA matches Holloway lineage, but not exactly Mark. Possible letter writer is Samuel Granger, Mark's cousin, lived next to the garage in 1977. Old file notes he vanished in 1980 after suspected woman assault. I think they were both involved in Emily's disappearance." Grant was silent a few seconds, then asked, "You sure?" Ava replied, "Not 100%, but too many matches. 2 men, same family, same neighborhood, both around the victim. And one vanished right after the case went cold." Grant sighed. "Find any other Holloway lineage still in Ontario. If Samuel has a son or grandson, get a comparison sample. As for Mark," he paused, then said quietly, "Be careful. If he knows you're digging up the past, he'll react." Ava looked out the window, endless night outside. In the rearview mirror, Streetlights receded like memories running backward. She whispered, almost a promise. If Emily vanished by 2 hands, I'll find both. On the morning of the 18th of May 2022, an Ontario court issued an emergency search warrant allowing the Cold Case Unit to investigate the site of Mark Holloway's old garage in Aurelia. It was the location listed on the 1977 business license under Holloway Auto Repair. After over 4 decades, the workshop had been sold to a new owner, a middle-aged mechanic named Carl Jensen, who only used the front for vehicle storage, leaving the rear foundation unchanged. Ava and the forensics team arrived early morning. Lake Couchiching fog still hung thick, cloaking rusted metal roofs where old motor oil and rust smells blended into a strange, heavy, suffocating scent. The new owner, Jensen, paled seeing the police vehicles. I've only rented this 6 years. If you need, I'll step out. Ava nodded, thanks. We just want to check the old workshop foundation. Won't affect your property. With yellow tape strung up, experts set up ground-penetrating radar, GPR, soil-penetrating radar to detect anomalies under concrete. 2 technicians slowly pushed the T-shaped probe across the oil-dusted floor. The screen showed steady wavy lines until one stopped, calling out. Anomaly here about 40 centimeters deep, dense material, not matching surrounding foundation. Ava stepped over, eyed the screen. A thick rectangular bright streak offset toward the wall corner, near the old car lift spot. How likely is that a void? She asked. Very high, the technician replied. Looks like a patched, concrete chamber, something buried below. They marked the spot, then began drilling. The drill screamed harshly, echoing in the enclosed space. Concrete chunks flaked off, revealing fine sand underneath. Less than 2 hours later, a small square cavity appeared half a meter deep, less than a meter wide, enough to hide a few items. Damp mold and rust smells rose. Ava crouched, gloved hands gently brushing sand layers. First emerged a soft gray object, a old woolen scarf, embroidered with pale blue initials, EC. She stopped breathing. Those letters, Emily Carter. The whole team froze. Ava lifted the scarf carefully, placing it in a clear evidence bag. Seal the sample. Send to DNA lab immediately, she said, voice hoarse. Beneath the scarf, they found long hairs tangled in damp fabric. A specialist picked each, placing in test tubes. Under light, hairs gleamed reddish-brown matching Emily's hair description in the file. Ava said nothing, just stared into the empty pit, eyes darkening. At the bottom, a different dark soil layer. A technician sampled. This soil isn't from the garage foundation, fine sand mixed with organic mud and clay minerals. Like lakeside soil. Ava understood instantly. Couchiching, she whispered. He brought lakeshore dirt to fill the pit, faking the environment. The team went silent. A barrier wanting concealment often blends traces with another site, so if dug up, it seems imported from outside. Too sophisticated for an ordinary mechanic. Ava ordered full cavity photos, millimeter measurements. Then, all evidence sent to Ontario Forensic Institute, scarf, hairs, soil, wood fragments with old paint from pit walls. Once sealed, Ava stood, scanning the workshop. Old oil stains gleamed, stale metal smells hit. In her mind rang George Randall's words. Holloway was the only one who knew the car location before police announced. If he knew where the car was, he knew how to hide evidence at his own workplace. 2 days later, preliminary lab report arrived. Ava opened the file, eyes scanning cold-typed lines. Sample number 13 amperes, woolen scarf. Contains female DNA. Matches Emily Carter's genetic profile, from victim's hair and toothbrush, stored 1,977. Sample Hasson 3B. Hairs. Same DNA source as number 13 amperes. Sample Hasson 3C. Soil. Matches mineral composition and mud particles characteristic of Lake Couchiching area. 0.3 miles from Carter vehicle discovery site. Ava read 3 times. Evidence no longer conjecture. The scarf was victim's personal item, clear DNA, soil matching abandonment scene. Meaning, Emily Carter was at this garage, or her items brought here by its 1977 operator. She called Inspector Grant. We have forensics confirmation. Emily's scarf, Emily's hair, and Couchiching Lake soil in Mark Holloway's garage. Other end silent seconds. Then Grant replied, voice lowered. You realize what this means? Ava. That she never left Aurelia. Everything started and ended here. Grant sighed. Good. Keep this quiet. I'll get warrant for Holloway's preliminary detention and questioning. But no DNA results revealed until we find more physical evidence tying him directly to the act. Ava nodded, eyes on desk photo. Emily Carter in 1970. 6th classroom, gentle smile, hair tied over shoulder. She whispered, Emily, we're getting very close. That afternoon, Ava returned to the garage one last time. Late sun slanted through rusted iron doors, casting long blade-like shadows on floor. She stared at the taped-over pit. A stray cat crossed, sniffed, vanished through wall crack. Nothing moved, only wind whistling through tin sheets like time's breath. She pulled phone, noted briefly. Holloway Auto Repair, Ground Zero. Concrete pit contains direct evidence. Next phase, verify link between Mark Holloway and Samuel Granger, determine who moved victim's items. Suspect, accomplices, or concealment of body. Leaving the workshop, Ava glanced back. Wall held faded wooden sign, Holloway Auto Repair. Since 1972 like a timestamp of deception. And in that brief moment, she felt Emily somewhere nearby, watching through dust layers, smiling faintly as if the girl knew her silence was finally broken. 3 days after finding the woolen scarf in the old garage, Ava got a call from the Simcoe County Magistrate's office. Search warrant for Samuel Granger's old house approved. This house, on south edge of Aurelia, sealed since 1980 seconds after Samuel vanished without trace. Abandoned since, changed hands few times, but original basement untouched. There, Ava believed, lay the rest of the mystery. Early morning, she and forensics team arrived at the house, a dark wood structure, gray shingled roof, moss-covered. Ground floor windows boarded, air faintly moldy and oily. No one's lived here since 1980, one local officer said. Current owner won't renovate, basement floor rotted. Ava replied, we just need to check below. Door opened, dust-clouded flashlight beams. Wooden stairs creaked descending to basement. Damp walls, zigzag cracks, but far corner held something odd, a metal toolbox, thick dust-covered, lock rusted. Ava knelt, pried with knife, lid popped open with dry clack. Inside, neatly packed old tools. Wrenches, screwdrivers, mallet, old electrical cord coil. But what stopped Ava was the inner lid, stuck with golden, beige paint streak, chips on edges. She signaled tech for sample. Under UV light, paint gleamed, matching Ford F-100 sample in file, same color, coverage. Ava noted quickly. Sample, Quaters Ampere. Paint match Mark Holloway's vehicle sample. Beneath tools, she found small yellowed envelope, sealed with old tape. Outside, shaky handwriting, don't forget what we did. Team silent. Ava opened. Inside, Polaroid photo, blurry, greenish tint, but hauntingly clear. A girl in a car, flash straight on, terrified face, eyes wide, hands half raised. No need long look. Ava recognized. Emily Carter. Air thickened. A tech whispered, God. Ava gripped table edge, examined closer. Right car window. Reflected man holding camera. Tall, broad-shouldered, baseball cap. She ordered digital zoom. Height, stance, shoulder ratio near. Perfect match to 1977 Mark Holloway. Physical description. We have two in the photo, Ava said slowly, words dropping like on cold concrete. Emily Carter, and photographer likely Mark. Immediately, Polaroid sealed in airtight plastic. Ava requested transfer to Toronto Microforensics for fingerprints, fibers, contact DNA. While awaiting, she searched rest of basement. Walls held moldy paper scraps, scrawled numbers, and women's names, mostly 1970 seconds. Lakeside residence. One circled red. E. Carter, 10/23. Emily's disappearance date. Back in Toronto that evening, Ava sat alone in office, staring at scanned photo on screen. Couldn't look away from Emily's expression, wide eyes, fear and plea. Reflected figure seemed approaching. In the photo, amid flash burst, truth captured just 45 years unseen. 3 days later, forensics report arrived. First line choked Ava. Sample Hasson 4B. DNA on Polaroid edge 99.98% match to Mark Holloway sample, compared to DNA from subject's pipe at residence. She read twice, hands clenched. No doubt Mark not just involved. Present directly when photo taken, in Emily's car. More, showed Emily alive in that moment before total vanishing. Ava reported to Inspector Grant immediately. We have victim photo in car, Holloway DNA on evidence, paint matching his vehicle. Remaining question. Samuel Granger's role? Grant replied, voice hoarse. If Samuel kept the photo, he witnessed, or held evidence for leverage. Either way, Holloway can't escape direct involvement now. Ava gazed through window. Toronto night quiet, rain pattering roof. Thought of old garage, damp basement. 2 same-name men living adjacent 1977. One vanished, one stayed. Between them sole photo preserving vanished girl's face from Aurelia. She opened notebook, wrote final line. Second, evidence establishes direct link from victim's car to perpetrator's hands. From here, no longer suspect. That evening, Ava printed photo, placed on desk beside woolen scarf. 2 evidences, 2 worlds, 1 story. In photo, flash froze Emily's fear, but illuminated face of manhole Aurelia, once trusted as kind mechanic, neighbor helper. Ava whispered, like oath, you left your own light in that photo, Mark. And that light will burn the last lie. Late March morning 2023, fog blanketed Barrie thick as smoke. Police lights flickered in white haze, reflecting on wet road. North Sunnydale Road neighborhood sealed off. OPP task force and cold case investigators waited outside 118 Woodhouse, Mark Holloway's home 20 years. Seemingly peaceful. White walls, low fence, blooming tulips. Ava stood behind command vehicle, earpiece tight. Captain's voice steady on radio. Target confirmed inside. Living room light on. No others. She breathed deep, peered through foggy window. Mark's shadow moved, sitting in armchair by window, as if expecting this. At 6:07 a.m., loudspeaker blared. Mark Holloway. This is Ontario Provincial Police. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. Step outside, hands raised. No response. 5 seconds, 10, 15 passed. Door silent. Ava gripped earpiece, signaled approach team. 2 officers advanced, pounded door. Inside, chair scrape, then slow lock turn. Door opened. Mark Holloway appeared in thick gray sweater, silver hair, sunken eyes. His gaze odd, not fear, not surprise, just like one long awaited. You're earlier than I thought, he said quietly. Ava stepped up, presented warrant, voice clear. Mark Holloway, you're under arrest for direct involvement in Emily Carter's 1977 Aurelia disappearance. You have the right to remain silent, and to an attorney. Mark eyed her moment, then faint smile, chilling her spine. If she went far away, he said, why 45 years and no one seen? Words slow, like cold blade. Ava replied low, because you never let her go far, you just hit her where no one looked. Mark tilted head slightly, eyes challenging glint. You're smarter than the others, he said. But smart doesn't mean you understand everything. 2 officers advanced, cuffed him. As led to car, wind-scattered fog, neighbors who knew old mechanic's slow yard walk stood silent. Woman whispered, I still saw him walking the dog every morning. Never thought. At scene, Ava watched police car fade. That moment, no victory, just heavy emptiness. She knew evidence solid. DNA on photo, scarf, garage soil, vehicle paint, testimonies of Mark's misdirection in old search. But knew too, something unfound Emily. At OPP Barrie headquarters, Mark taken to interrogation room. Ava sat opposite, Polaroid photo centered on table. Yellow light beamed down, casting on his aged face. Recognize the person in the photo? She asked. Mark looked at the photo, eyes glancing over then stopping at the reflection. I once had a Polaroid camera, he replied. Many people in town did. Taking photos isn't a crime. Ava placed another clear envelope on the table inside the woolen scarf embroidered EC. And this? Found in your garage, with Couchiching Lake soil and Emily's hair. Mark squinted, cuffed hands on table trembling slightly. I sold that garage over 40 years ago. Who knows what people left in it? We know, Ava replied, voice cold. Because DNA on the photo edge matches yours 99.98%. No one else. You took it. And you were the last to see her alive. Air in the room thickened. Mark bowed head, chuckled dryly. You know, he said, sometimes people believe what they want to believe. And the truth, sometimes there's no room left in memory. Ava stared straight into his eyes. The truth is still in the ground, and the ground doesn't forget. He said no more. Just looked up at the ceiling, eyes cloudy like one who'd seen something too big to hide. That afternoon, as the car carrying Mark left headquarters, arrest news spread across Ontario. Local TV stations reported, OPP arrest Mark Holloway, 78, in connection with 1977 disappearance of Emily Carter. Images of the house, yellow tape, and silver-haired old man head bowed being led away filled screens. In Aurelia, former 1977 search participants went silent watching the broadcast. Harold Baines, who said, Mark misdirected then vanished midnight, sighed. Turns out we walked with the one who made her vanish. And at the small Carter family home, now only Emily's cousin living there, the porch light stayed on all night like 40 years before. Ava watched the broadcast on small office screen, hands clenched tight. The arrest was just the first step. More interrogation, prosecution, trial ahead. But that night, for the first time in months, she saw Lake Couchiching in her mind calmer, as if the water had stopped holding a secret. Second-floor interrogation room at OPP Barrie blazed under fluorescent lights, cold gray painted walls, no windows. Ava sat opposite Mark Holloway, on table 3 sealed clear plastic evidence bags. 1,978 anonymous letter, woolen scarf embroidered EC, and Polaroid photo. Beside, screen-zoomed DNA report lines confirming. Sample matches Mark Holloway DNA, 99,98%. Mark sat straight, hands clasped on table, wrists still marked from cuffs. He looked calm, almost contemptuous, eyes dull of one too used to suspicion but never charged. Ava didn't speak right away. She just sat watching, letting silence stretch. Wall clock ticked softly, each second like water drops in sealed room. Finally, she said, You know why we're here, Mark. 45 years ago, Emily Carter vanished. 3 days later, her car found. 4 years later, her father got typed letter saying, Don't look anymore. We retested the letter DNA on envelope flap as yours and a close relative, Samuel Granger. How do you explain that? Mark smirked, voice low. Samuel helped me at the garage. If his DNA's on the letter, he wrote it. I know nothing about that stuff. Ava nodded slightly. Then the woolen scarf found in your workshop concrete foundation has Emily's DNA and Couchiching Lake soil where her car was abandoned. Mark shrugged. I said it. I sold the shop in 1983. People in and out repairing. Who knows what they brought? Maybe someone misplaced. Maybe him, Samuel. Ava opened briefcase, pulled printed photo of 2 men, Mark and Samuel standing together before garage in 1976 opening ceremony. You and Samuel were close, right? Relatives, co-workers, even partners. He vanished in 1980, right after suspected woman assault. And you stayed, lived quietly 40 years. Ever wonder, if he's alive, what he'd say? When Mark eyed the photo, eyes showing fatigue. Samuel was weak, always scared. If anything happened, he did it, not me. Ava leaned forward. You say he was weak. So why in the letter, writer says, we did it, plural, Mark? Not I. 2 people, 2 hands. Silence. Only air conditioner hum. Mark looked at floor, then spoke slowly. I didn't write any letter. He could have. I just helped him clean up. When he left Aurelia, I thought it was over. Ava sighed, voice steady like reading indictment. Then how do you explain your DNA on the Polaroid? The reflection in car window, height, shoulder width, baseball cap, all match you. You were there, Mark. For first time since arrest, Mark frowned, eyes twitching slightly. What photo? Ava didn't answer. She opened evidence bag, placed Polaroid on table. Photo blurry green, flash making Emily's face clear, fear frozen in frame. Mark stared, face losing fake calm. Slight tremor crossed his lips. That photo doesn't exist anymore, he muttered. Ava looked up. How do you know it once existed? Mark realized he spoke too fast. He turned away, clenched hands. I just heard people say there was a photo. Rumor. No, Mark, Ava said softly, voice cold as steel. No one but you and Samuel knew there was a photo, this found in his basement. You just said doesn't exist anymore, meaning you believe it was destroyed. Only one who saw it would know that. Air in room thickened. Mark breathed fast, trying regain calm. You're making it up. DNA could be contaminated, photo could be faked. Ava replied. Polaroid can't be faked. Internal film chemicals prove original shot 1977. And your DNA not contaminated. You know that. He went silent, eyes drifting elsewhere. Left hand tapped lightly on table, old mechanic habit when stressed. Ava watched closely, recalling in reflection photo, man's hand holding camera tapped same rhythm. You say Samuel weak. Ava continued. But I think opposite. He kept evidence, photo, envelope, things you thought gone. Maybe he planned expose you, or just remind you. And when he vanished 1980, maybe you felt safe. Mark slammed table, metallic clang sharp. You don't know anything, he shouted, then stopped, realizing exposed emotion. Room fell heavy silence. Ava didn't react, just stared straight. No, she said, voice lowering. I know very well. I know that girl trusted you, brought car to your garage for repair, and I know you were last to see her alive. I know you were there, by Lake Couchaching, night of October 22. And I know, this photo is moment you chose to remember and to forget. Mark leaned back in chair, sweat beading on forehead. Crooked smile appeared, half bitter, half weary. What do you want to hear? That I killed her? That Samuel and I together? He stopped, bit lip, turned away. Ava stood slowly, gathered files. Don't need you to say. We'll let evidence speak for you. As she stepped out, Mark raised head, hoarse voice echoing behind. You'll never find her, detective. She's in a place where water and ground don't talk to each other anymore. Ava paused at threshold, turned. But I still hear, she replied, and I'll make you hear with me. Door closed. In room, Mark bowed head, light reflecting in his eyes, gaze of one who just buried himself with words meant to deny. 2 weeks after interrogation, Ava haunted by Mark Holloway's final words. She's in a place where water and ground don't talk to each other anymore. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not challenge, like a clue vague, but deliberate. Ava sat with 1977 Aurelia map, flipping areas around Lake Couchaching. Noticed small west-southwest town spot, former industrial waste dump, where Holloway garage hauled metal scrap and old oil drums. Per city records, area filled and closed 1984. Now, just gravel base and few abandoned warehouses. She reported to Inspector Grant, requested second excavation warrant. If he dumped evidence, this only place. His water and ground don't talk, may mean not natural ground, man-made fill, where water can't seep. Grant thought seconds, nodded. You have 48 hours. Bring GPR team and forensics cameras. If anything, bring it back. Morning of the 14th of April 2023, forensics team set white tent in empty Aurelia West lot, former dump. Distant old factory smokestacks like scars on gray sky. Ava in reflective vest, beside technician Julia Merrick. Ground penetrating radar, GPR, powered on, slid slowly over gravel. This time, signal in under hour. Hollow metal object, 1.2 meters deep, size like old fuel drum. Julia eyed screen. This special not just trash, deliberately buried item. Ava signaled dig. Mechanical shovel plunged. Layers earth and gravel flying. Over hour later, gray metal top emerged as predicted. Industrial fuel drum. 1,970 seconds garage type. Surface rusted, but lid locked with screws. Tech Pride lid, acrid oil and corroded metal smell rushed out. Inside, not chemicals, but small plastic box, wrapped tight in nylon and old tape. Ava gloved, peeled layers. Light hitting, she saw shiny black coil, Super 8 film reel, edges moldy, but core intact. She held breath. He filmed something. At OPP Toronto Image Lab, reel placed in restoration machine. Tech ran slow, frames projecting blurry but recognizable. Narrow dirt road, headlights through fog, silver Toyota Corolla stopped forest edge. Room dead silent. Ava close to screen, eyes glued each frame. At second 12, woman's shadow exiting car, long hair, light sweater, matching Emily Carter description. She stood mid-road, looking around, like waiting someone. Next frame, light spread, beige Ford F-100 appeared distant. Headlights off, silently approaching. Image fuzzy, but clearly Mark's truck model. Ford stopped right behind Emily's. Tall man stepped down, back view only, broad shoulders, short hair, baseball cap. He circled the passenger door, said something to Emily. She stepped back, then boarded his truck. Then light went out. Next scene, different angle. Oblique from distance, Ford driving slow along Couchaching Lakeside Road. Shot shaky, like fixed mount camera, not handheld. Ava frowned. Not Topaz. This surveillance camera. Tech rewound, reel start. Zoomed, screen bottom edge. There, faint, white, small text. Holloway Auto Repair. Security camera 1. Timestamp. 1977. 38 p.m. Room stunned. Ava froze. Mark once said 1,977. He installed cameras to watch customer cars nights, but no one thought surveillance tape survived. Turns out, he buried his own camera reel, which recorded the crime that night. No coincidence, Ava said, voice hoarse. He buried it with garage waste, thinking rust and oil would mask film chemicals. But he forgot metal evidence doesn't degrade. In following hours, forensics analyzed each frame. Film timestamp matched exactly. Emily reported missing night the 22nd of October 1977, around 10 p.m. Even moonlight on lake matched satellite weather records that night. When final frame appeared, Ava saw Ford stop lakeside, lights on then off, 2 shadows exiting, male, female, then just water, rippling in wind. Footage ended there. Ava stood still, eyes closed. Didn't need continuation to know what happened. She knew exactly, because 1,978 letter said, "She's gone far away. Don't look anymore." Investigation report completed that night. Evidence number 17 amperes. Super 8 film reel. Extracted from Holloway garage surveillance camera. Content. Records victim Emily Carter exiting vehicle. Approaching Mark Holloway's Ford F-100. Night of the 22nd of October 1977. Verification. Original timestamp matches actual weather and moonlight data. Conclusion. Visual evidence confirms Mark Holloway's presence at disappearance scene. When Ava placed the Polaroid photo and film reel side by side, she realized 2 time slices. One moment, Emily alive. Second moment, he took her. 2 evidences from same hand, differing by 45 years. She reported back to Grant. He listened, pensive. In the end, he filmed his own crime. Just took half a lifetime to find the reel. Ava nodded, looking out window. Aurelia sky that afternoon grayish, distant Lake Couchaching reflecting faint silver. Sometimes, she said, best crime hiders don't fear police, they fear their own memories. And memory